Hi, my name's Andy. I'm from Clear Left and Deconstruct and Silverback, and today I was talking about how to seduce users by creating beautiful interfaces.
Thank you. Thank you. So, your eyes meet across a crowded room. You hold their gaze for a couple of seconds longer than you'd really comfortable, and then avert your eyes. You look back, they're still looking at you. Seduction professionals call this the dip. Very, very effective technique. You smile, they smile, you feel a little awkward. You summon up the nerve to walk up to them, start talking. You don't remember what you said, but you crack a few jokes, they laugh, the chemistry's there. You're smiling, you're talking about your likes, your interests. It's business time. We've all been there. When people think about seduction, they think about movies like The Graduate, where the older, experienced woman kind of tempts and seduces the younger, inexperienced man into her arms. Or we think about historical figures like Casanova, who was romancing the women of 18th century Venice with his wily, beguiling ways. The idea of seduction is as old as time, and it's really baked into this kind of Judeo-Christian mythology. Often it's seen as a negative thing. It's seen as bad. People think of it as leading people astray. However, I actually think that seduction can be a good thing. It can be a fun thing. It's not necessarily this bad, manipulative thing that we hear about all the time. Seduction is often little more than this kind of playful interchange between two consenting partners. It's a game that's sort of played out in the clubs, the bars, the restaurants, and the bedrooms around the world. In fact, if it wasn't for seduction, we probably all wouldn't be here today. Thank your parents for having the moves. The truth is, we enjoy being seduced. We enjoy letting go to a bigger, deeper power. There's a fascination inside of us that we like to let be released and sort of be taken on this tidal wave of experience. It's something that we really want to do. What I'm going to be talking about today is seductive interfaces. An idea or term that was coined by Tim Skelly, a Microsoft games developer, in 1994. And he was saying that a seductive design is a form of design that makes conscious use of psychological methods of persuasion. And if you study how people, there is a science behind persuasion, and there's lots of little tips and techniques you can pick up on. It's used to entice, to tempt, to surprise users into some kind of action. And in fact, it's what we as designers do every single day, whether we're conscious of it or not. Sometimes it's just a subconscious action, like meeting that person in the bar. Often we don't have this set sort of play, but we know somehow inside that there's certain kind of conventions and moves that you can make. Now, when I'm talking about seduction, I'm not talking about sort of manipulation. I'm not talking about getting people to do something they don't really want to do. This isn't mind control. This isn't hypnosis. I'm not interested in one-night stands. What I'm interested in is the fine art of user seduction. So what I want to teach you today are a series of tricks, techniques, taken from some of the best seducers in the world, to help seduce your visitors into some kind of action, maybe being regular users, maybe signing up. And hopefully, just hopefully, make them fall in love with your product or service. Now, the first step of seduction ritual is the approach. We all know, that first impressions count, but we probably don't know how much. Studies have shown that women will make up their mind about a man, about 45% of women will make up their mind about a man and his suitability as a partner in the first 30 seconds. And I'm sure you guys, when I came on stage, you made some assumptions about the way I was dressed and the way I sounded as to whether this would be an interesting and engaging talk. Men actually take a little longer. Men take about half an hour on average to make up their minds. We're a little bit less kind of decisive in these matters. And there's been loads of psychological studies about this kind of stuff. In Princeton, they flashed up pictures of people, faces of people, for as short as 1/10 of a second. And people, even with that short time frame, were able to make judgments based on just that look about whether they thought people were trustworthy, whether they thought people were competent, whether they thought people would be making suitable partners. The interesting thing is, after that experiment, they kind of gave people longer to look at these photos, thinking that maybe after people had extra time to study them, they would change their mind. But it turns out that first impressions really, really last. It actually took hours, if not days or weeks of immersion to change people's minds after that first impression was made. It turns out that rather than making a judgment and then acting on it, we act on something and then we rationalize it afterwards. So, if you've ever read Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, it's very, very accurate about how we make decisions. We make them in an instant. Something called the halo effect. The instant that we make this decision, we wrap our decision in this kind of halo, this aura, and we carry on, wrapping it in this aura, because frankly, we don't like to be proved wrong. We don't like to make a decision, then half an hour later go, nah, no, I think I was wrong. So we carry on this facade, we carry on this game. Apple know this only too well. They're masters of seduction. They understand that the first impression really counts. You get an iPod, you slide it out of the box, you peel down the plastic wrap. It's almost seductive. It's like undressing your girlfriend for the first time. It's delicious. Is it any wonder that people will photograph the whole process, take pictures of the unboxing ceremony, and post it up on Flickr? You couldn't imagine people doing that with a Zoom now, could you? The secret of attraction, or one of the big secrets, is good looks. It's fundamental, and we like to think that we can look beyond that, but actually we're hardwired to focus on attraction. Researchers have sort of shown that people have this beauty premium. If you're attractive, you're likely to get 15% higher wages. You're more likely to get hired for your job. You're more likely to get a lighter sentence in criminal sort of proceedings. They've done studies on things like the weakest link, where attractive contestants are less likely to get voted out and hence make more money. We're hardwired to sort of be appealed by attractiveness. In fact, there's this psychological theory called what is attractive is good, or what is beautiful is good. We relate beauty to quality somehow. Online dating profiles. If you're a man and you say you're 5'6" or 5'7", you'll get 60% more first sort of invites than if you say you're 5'7". Even these kind of little arbitrary sort of attractive symbols make a big effect on people. Now, if you're in a dating sort of situation and you want to appear more attractive, there are kind of things you can do to help. It's a bit of a cliche, but wearing a smart suit, wearing a flashy watch, driving a fast car can actually increase your levels of attractiveness. And this has been shown in various studies. As close away as March this year, they put pictures of people in front of cars, and when they asked other people to rate their level of attractiveness, they were always higher when they're in front of a flash car. And we can get a gimmick. We can wear a silly hat. We can get stupid shoes. Thank you. Seduction artists will even teach you maybe to learn magic tricks. So when you go up to your potential date or partner, you kind of amaze them with this kind of gimmick. We're hardwired to notice things that are different, to stand out from the crowd. It just goes back to our primal roots. A lot of it is about just having some kind of personality. If you seem to be different, you are deemed more attractive. Pickup lines. Pickup lines like this don't really work. Even in this kind of situation, you go up to a girl, I just, like a global mav, I always like to be on top. Yeah, it's not working. You need to be genuine. You need to just be a genuine, friendly, approachable human being. Just talk about them, ask them what they're interested in, ask them what they like. Interestingly, there was a study done recently about the top preferred chat-up lines. And if you guys are wanting to try any of this stuff out in the bar tonight, the two top chat-up lines, the ones that women like the most are, what character would you choose if you were on Stars in Their Eyes? This is science, by the way. Don't ask me. And the one that men's like the most were, what pizza topping would you be? Cheesy, I know. But sorry about the pun, sorry about the pun. The trick is just to come across as being genuine. And lastly, you need to be a little bit mysterious. You know, people love mystery. They love a bit of a challenge. You don't give everything away on the first date because people won't want to come back for more. Okay, so obviously this isn't supposed to be a talk about dating. It's supposed to be a talk about the web. So how can we take some of these rules and apply them to what we do each day? Well, first off, looks really, really count. There's value in making something beautiful because people will judge the value on your website really, really quickly by first impressions. And again, there's been studies that will show if people flash up an image of a website for as little as 1/10 of a second, people can tell whether they think that website is trustworthy, is high quality. And so getting that initial first impression is really important. It's worth spending a bit of extra time on the design. I'm going to do a little test now. I'm going to flash up 3 websites, 3 car websites. I want you all to focus really, really hard on the screen, see the 3 websites, and I'm going to ask you which one you think you'd buy a used car from. Okay, so who thinks they'd buy a used car from site number 1? Okay, maybe about 10% of the audience. Site number 2? Wow. 5% of the audience. And site number 3? Amazing. That was in a half a second. You've made some kind of snap judgment based on I don't know what. And this is how we work. We can't escape it. We then try and rationalize. We then try and create reasons why we like these things. But that initial sort of instant is really important. I think first impressions, make a big impact. One of the best sites I've seen recently to make a positive first impression was Goala. Beautiful design, lickable icons, just there was something right about the site. The registration process, again, it was really smooth, it was really simple. Big, chunky form elements, nice feedback that kind of like buoys you along in the process. It wasn't sort of rocket science. We've been knowing how to do this stuff for ages, but there was just something kind of nice and comfortable and reassuring about this site. It made me feel like it was a site I could trust and use. Obviously, we can't put suits on websites and we can't give them flashy cars. Although, like I say, a nice design embodies a sense of trust. Extra sort of trust mechanisms are things like prominent phone numbers, prominent contact details. You stick a big phone number at the top right-hand corner of your site and it sends a message. It sends a message that you're not trying to hide anything, that you're happy to be out there and to be contactable. Extra sort of signifiers like customer comments show that you're a genuine person, that that you have friends, that you're likable, that you're being used, you're not a fly-by-night. And again, just like Ryan and his lovely hat, you have to have a gimmick, you have to differentiate. One of the best gimmicks I've seen for a while, again, is Trip-It, with this idea that you rather than having to log in and create this sort of, complicated sort of sign-up process, you just email them, an email from your travel confirmation. It does it all for you. This is a gimmick for Ann Summers, Discover Your G-Spot. And they kind of realize that, maybe finding the G-Spot is like navigating on a map. So they've overlaid this map on a picture of a woman and put a little Google pin indicating where you need to travel to. I really like Jubilee. Jubilee just has this beautiful little interaction on the homepage, this slider. We've all seen sliders before, but Jubilee have said, this is our unique gimmick. We're going to make the slider the feature of the homepage. And it's a delight to play. You move around the slider, you increase it and decrease it. It's really fun. Sadly, I think that, that's the kind of the best part of the site. When I actually get into the site, I'm a little bit disappointed because I had so much fun on the homepage. The rest of the site doesn't live up to expectations. And again, I think in the seduction dance, you have to be really careful. If you're trying to seduce a partner, you need to make sure that what you're selling, what you're putting forward, actually lives up to how you've sold it. Again, personality is important. I use this slide all the time, but Flickr, it just has a nice, friendly, non-threatening personality. It's quirky. It's a site you can trust. And again, to kind of get a little bit of mystery, you don't want to give everything away straight off. And something like Silverback, we just put up this little holding page. Didn't really tell anybody what the site was about, but people got really excited. They got really, what's this Silverback thing that Clearleft are doing? And over the course of like a weekend, we got 20,000 sign-ups. So a little bit of mystery, a little bit of teasing can really help there. And again, in this sort of dating dance, you don't want to give everything away straight off. You want to get this kind of sense of mutual progressive disclosure. This is a rating sort of widget on Netflix. And rather than just asking you to rate and giving you no payoff, it asks you to rate. And when you rate something, you get 2 recommendations in return. So there's kind of like social contract, this sort of payoff that you get for being involved, this sense of reciprocity. And finally, in this section of the approach, I think the initial Moo experience is just one of sheer delight. It didn't try to sell to me, it didn't try to trick me, it just kind of reeled me in, it kind of tempted me in down this path. And it was a path that was enjoyable and fun. And if you're thinking about sort of dating metaphors, I think Flickr and Moo, this kind of relationship, made a perfect first date. Okay, so we've made the approach. We now need to kind of step it up again. We need to kind of get that rapport going, that kind of like, that sort of tension and that understanding. It's that getting to know you period. It's that new relationship smell. It's often the best part of the dating kind of time when you've got stuff that they don't know, they've got stuff that you don't know, and you're kind of sharing in this kind of mutual exchange. To build rapport, psychologists have perceived that you have to have shared interests. I know it sounds obvious, but actually, shared interests essentially validate the other person's own belief of themselves. If they are really into tango dancing, and you're really into tango dancing, it validates the fact that tango dancing is cool. And if you're really trying to attract somebody, rather than just meeting them in a pub or a dance floor, go to a club, go to a tango club, or go to an art class or something where you've got this kind of shared relationship. This is called the attitude similarity effect, and it's a principle that we find people more attractive the more similar they are to us. And actually, if you look at couples, often couples, even look sort of quite similar, often sort of sharing the same kind of interests. Familiarity also breeds attractiveness. The more time you spend around people in the location, the more likely you are to sort of become attractive to them. In fact, a lot of kind of seduction experts suggest that if you're trying to approach a man or woman in a club, rather than going straight up to them, you kind of spend a bit of time in their kind of comfort zone, maybe standing sort of at an angle to them, so they feel you around their area and they don't feel threatened at all. It's just building up this sense of familiarity. And if you want to get in with somebody, you want to get in with their friends. People get validated socially by their group of peers. So again, seduction experts will suggest that rather than going straight up to the person that you're interested in, go up and chat to their friends. If their friends like you, if you can get in with their friends, the person you're actually interested in is more likely to be interested in you as well. It's this sense of social validation. And then similarly, if you go on a blind date, you're much more likely to like the other person if you know that somehow you're socially connected, that your friend said, oh yeah, go out with this person. They're really great, they've got a great sense of humor. You're more likely to trust them than just what somebody says on a dating site. And this seems obvious, but actually, again, from a psychological perspective, there's this concept of liking. And simply put, we like people who like us back. So in this sort of dating situation, if you just appear to like someone, they will not help but kind of mirror that back to you because it makes them feel good, it makes them feel sort of special and liked. I mean, there's a lot of studies sort of in this area about how it works. And so obviously we like people to be around us more because we get that sense of self-validation. However, what you don't want to do is be needy. Neediness is a huge turn-off. Don't keep pestering your intended kind of loved one. Don't keep kind of like phoning them and being kind of overly needy because it's not an attractive trait. You want to actually hold a little bit back. So again, how does this apply to the web, I hear you asking? Well, first off, the attitude similarity effect. People love Etsy because Etsy mirrors back to the community what they already love. So you go to Etsy and you feel an immediate sense of warmth and kind of safety because you're in an environment that is, like you. Testimonials are really important. I mean, Basecamp do a really great job of sort of demonstrating their testimonials. What they do is they pick pictures of people or that they think their audience can identify with. If I'm on here and I'm looking at the guys at Threadless who are awesome, cool, I think, well, I'm kind of, a bit like a Threadless kind of person. If I see Threadless saying Basecamp are cool, they're going to be cool. And they do this to such a huge degree. I mean, if you actually look at the testimonials page, it's about 5 times this long. But they pick so many different people in the hope that you will see somebody and identify with somebody, that you will then go, if such and such, if Amnesty like this site, it must be for me. If you don't have the access to testimonials, then other forms of social proof are really important. Usage statistics, how many people are visiting your site, how many people are downloading, all this kind of stuff. It makes you seem that you're more secure, that you've been around for longer. We like people who are liked. We want to be in with the cool kids. We want to be in with, the popular boy or girl in school. And so if you can create that impression that you're popular, people will want you even more. Again, Verb do this, very well. A lot of sites you see using this idea of social proof with just lists of the number of people and groups and all that kind of stuff. Again, it's validation. And again, building this sense of kind of common interest. This is what social networks do. Sites like Ning, sites like Last.fm, they say, hey guys, we're like you. We're into music, we're music fans, and we can hook you up with other people who share sort of similar interests. So if you can create an environment of similarity, if you can create an environment where people's similarities bubble up to the surface, you're onto a winner. And we all know, in the dating world or in the real world, it isn't much fun doing it on your own. So we want to try and get people involved. And this is kind of basically through the invite process. Invite processes are really important. We want to be around our friends because our friends give us social validation. If you can encourage people to invite their friends into this system, you're much more likely to have success. I think Gowalla has a really nice invite process. Okay, so we've made the approach. We've got in with the crowd. We've generated this kind of sense of interest. Now we need to pull out the big guns. We need to start sparking desire. We need to spark that sense of desire in that other person so they will want us as much as we want them. And one of the ways of doing this is just through humor. Again, studies have shown that laughter, jokes, just messing around, being silly is one of the primary ways that we as humans make a connection with other human beings. So if you can kind of break down those barriers, if you can make people laugh, if you can make people smile, they are much more likely to find you attractive. And then you need to start flirting, this kind of playful, joyous kind of experience which hints at something possibly in the future, but is kind of really just about being in the now, being in the moment, this kind of connection between two people, this kind of back and forth kind of play. I think Innocent Smoothies are great at doing this in the in the commercial world. When I saw this for the first time, it was a dreary kind of winter morning, and I'd run out of juice, and I turned the juice carton over, and it said, "Stop looking at my bottom." And it was like, I had this big grin on my face. It was really I was surprised, I was shocked, I was delighted. It was a little bit cheeky. You don't expect your juice carton to be talking to you in the morning unless you've had a really heavy night the night before. But the thing is, I went about the rest of my day with this big grin on my face. And because of that, immediately it created a bond between me and this company. And that bond has stayed, that first impression has stayed. So try and be playful with your copywriting. Try and have this sort of seductive language that draws people in. Again, a lot of seduction experts will suggest that you use, not overtly sexual language, but language that's kind of tinged with a hint of sexuality, a hint of kind of visceralness. One of the ways they suggest is sort of getting people talking about food. Now, what's the best meal you ever had? What's the last meal that you really enjoyed? And that stimulates the part of the brain that's all about sense. And that part of the brain that's all about sense is also very, very linked to sensuality and seduction. And it kind of starts the dopamines, the chemicals flowing, and you get into this kind of like mood. It's actually called priming in the advertising industry. They prime people through a message, and then they deliver that message. Now, if you're trying to flirt, if you're trying to seduce, you don't want to go all kind of like, short skirts and everything on show. You want to be seductive. But you want to maybe just give a little hint of what's to come. But once you've done that, you want to take it away again. You want to remove that. Because it's based on loss aversion. If we feel that we've had something, if we feel that we've seen something in the past, we'll want it even more. And this is what, burlesque dancers do all the time. It's not about striptease, it's not about going to a lap dancing club. It's about being demure, it's about being seductive. It's about showing only enough, but not too much. This is a fantastic advertising campaign that I saw, very, very cheeky advertising campaign in Auckland. As the wind blows, the skirt lifts up. This is a billboard on a main street, and it was causing traffic jams. It was causing road accidents. As people were walking, they go, oh my God. And you just don't expect it. It's a little bit cheeky. It's a little bit kind of naughty, but not sort of overt. Again, in the product world, things like the Kubricks and these little sort of Japanese toys, you get a box and there's like 5 or 6 different options. And you don't know which one you're going to get. And it's actually quite exciting, It's like that sort of Kinder Egg experience or that Christmas experience. You get it home, you can't wait to rip it up, and then, oh, it's not the one I wanted. I wanted the grey one, but I got the crappy green one. But you go back and have another one, and another one, another one. It's addictive. Anybody want this, by the way? Anyone? Okay. There you go. Actually, I've got a couple more in here. Sorry, I'm stealing this one off. I'm stealing this one off of one of our deconstruct speakers. So over this way, way. Oh, one more, one more. One more. Oh, okay. Last one. Actually, I'm going to keep this one for myself. Be a little demure. And then finally, you've got to know when to go in for that move. Too soon and you'll crash and burn. Too late and you'll have missed your opportunity. So how does this work on the web? Well, it's very easy to bring sexiness into sort of websites that are related to sexiness, lingerie websites. This little calendar for Mylar, which is one of my favorite underwear sellers. In fact, I'm wearing one of their numbers under this outfit. And this calendar is, it's just fun, it's cheeky. You roll over the boxes and they open, but don't show you too much. You've got to click through to get that understanding. It's just kind of playful. We see this in iPhone apps as well. There's a few kind of iPhone apps out there, like iSteam, where you kind of rub the steam off and you get a picture of a sexy man or a sexy lady underneath. But there's something tactile about kind of rubbing the kind of steam off. It is quite sort of sensual. But that's not the kind of sexy interfaces I want to talk about today. I want to talk about this kind of sexy interface. I want to talk about interfaces that are just so beautiful and so joyous to use, you can't stop playing with them. I mean, this is just an interface for a conversion app that you can convert gallons to litres, or you convert Fahrenheit to centigrade. But it's just so much fun to play. People buy it for the interface. People buy it for the experience. It seduces us. And playfulness, again, you see a lot of playful apps with the iPhones, like this bump tool, where you're just in a pub and you shake your iPhones at the same time and you can share contacts. It's a physical manifestation of a playful act and is very seductive. It's different sort of JavaScript sort of tools and widgets, fades and slides and stuff actually are kind of very playful. And I used to be very against all these kind of whizzy effects. I was very much this kind of like, Stalinist approach to web design, where it should be pure HTML and it should just be content and nobody needs these kind of little kind of delightful interactions. But I actually think it's the delightful interactions that make some of these websites. We're seeing these kind of carousels. Sorry for the frame rate not working quite well on this video. But we're seeing these carousels kind of pop up where you kind of press the button and it slides over. And, it's just a nice action. There's something quite sensual about the kind of the motion that you get. And we see it everywhere, from the iPlayer to sci-fi channel websites to movie websites, and it just adds a little bit extra level of interest and a little bit extra sort of interaction into the mix. And again, we need to be showing our personality and our quirkiness. Quite often it's all about copy. It's all about showing personality through joyous little moments of copy, whether it's silly 404 messages, or whether it's bright kite telling you must be logged in. It just shows that you're up for a bit of a laugh. You're kind of you're game for it, in a funny interaction kind of way, obviously. But there's real world applications. I mean, I'm sure everybody here hates captchas. But Zero have got a great way of dealing with captchas. They turn something that's really monotonous, like typing in some characters or checking a checkbox, into a game of noughts and crosses. And actually, it's quite fun. Again, I think Doppler are the masters of this. Doppler just love their toys, these ideas of little delighters. They have no real value, except that they just make people love them. Doppler, users love, the little, widgets that show how, what your personal velocity is. Or at the end of the year, they give you this report of how much you've traveled and where you've been and all this kind of stuff. And it's just joyous. I'm seeing people kind of use this game-like psychology in this kind of initial sort of dating dance. A really good example of this is a site called VTraveled. So you've just logged in, you've just filled in your email address and your password. And normally what these people would do is they would ask you, a list of questions which would be yes, no, check boxes about what kind of things you're interested in. But here they've turned it into a game of matching up your interests. And actually, it was quite fun. And you're kind of there, oh, well, where do I want to be? I want to be somewhere that's, on a beach and the kind of things I want to bring with me. I had to be fairly careful about which items I picked here. So, I want my laptop with me and I want to, have a map, so I want to go exploring. And it's just fun. And after a couple of minutes, you realize you've given them a whole bunch of information that you wouldn't have done otherwise. So I would imagine that using this approach, they've probably got about 90% of their users signed up and giving them data. Whereas if it was literally just, a series of checkboxes, probably about 5 or 10% would have used it. Again, tinging language with this kind of almost kind of vaguely sexual but open for interpretation. I mean, I think poking on Facebook is the perfect example of this. If you're poking your mum, it's obviously just poking them with a finger. If you're poking a girl that you liked last night, there's a hint of kind of, ooh, what does this poke mean? And people actually use this a lot. A lot of people flirt and date online, and their technique is to go around sort of randomly poking girls. In fact, there's a lot of people in Brighton on West Street that try the same thing, but not much luck. But again, it's this seductive language. Every single shopping cart I see says, add to cart. This site, this fashion retailer says, I want it. It's a statement of intent. It's not about the functionality of the site. It's not about adding something to a dry shopping cart. It's by saying, I love this item. I want it. It's mine. And by making that statement, it makes it very, very difficult for you to then go away later and say, actually, no, I don't want that. So language can be really, really important for this dance. And because, as I said before, a little bit of mystery, a little bit of exclusivity really helps. You don't want to give it away on the first date. You want to be demure. You want to be wanted. And, things like found, you have to have an invite to join. And because it won't let you in immediately, you want it even more. We live in this kind of society where we always want what we can't have. And so building this into your system can be very powerful. In fact, one of the fastest growing e-commerce sites in the US at the moment is this site called Guilt. And it's an invite-only e-commerce store. Now that seems an absolutely mad idea. Surely the whole purpose of e-commerce is to drive as much traffic to it as possible, hoping that 2 or 3 people will buy something. Guilt's taking exactly the opposite turn. You can only get an invite if you know someone's in there, or you can sign yourself up to a waiting list, which might take weeks to get in. But what they offer is unique. They offer up to 70% discount on fashion labels. So if you're after that £700 Jimmy Choo, you can get it at $200 in this store. So people desperately want it, and they're fighting themselves to get in there. So far, this company has gone from nothing to 1 million registered users in about 18 months, which is pretty awesome for an e-commerce store, for an online store. The other thing is they only sell a limited number of products. They only sell maybe 5 or 6 products at a time. And these products often sell out within the first hour of them going on sale. So they have 2 or 3 sales, and on a Monday morning, they start selling. And by afternoon, all of these things are gone. Because it creates this passion, this excitement, this fervor that you must complete, you must connect to. And, we can do this by limiting supply. Everybody knows Gmail rather. It did this thing where it was invite only, but you had to get an invitation from a friend. Spotify does this as well. By limiting supply, you increase demand, and it's very, very clever. Okay, so we've done the deed. We've broken that sort of distance between ourselves and our partner. We're now trying to build this kind of loving relationship. We're trying to get commitment in the relationship. How do we do this? Well, again, proximity is really important. The more time you can spend with your loved one, the better. It builds those bonds. You get used to each other. You get comfortable with each other. You want to praise each other. People like receiving praise. People like receiving positive affirmation of their own self-worth. They feel good about themselves, and they feel good about the people that are saying nice things to them. You know, if you go in, you know, you wake up in the morning or you see someone that you're interested in, you say, hey, you know, nice dress, nice hair, you know, like the jeans or whatever it is. It makes them feel a little bit, you know, good inside. But don't be afraid to admit your mistakes. I don't know why this slide is up here. I did a search for mistake on Flickr, and this is one of the first ones that comes up. I'm guessing watchers of this movie thought that her getting married was a mistake. I don't know. But admit your mistakes. Be open and be honest. Nobody likes, you know, people who hide things away. There's a concept within relationships called social exchange theory, which essentially states that we will maintain a relationship as long as the benefit to us outweighs the cost. It's kind of like a social economics way of viewing the world. And social economics is a very, very interesting sort of field of study. And it kind of says that, you know, so long as we're receiving benefits like, you know, love, respect, enjoyment, affection, sex, money, whatever these things that are being lauded upon us, as long as we're getting them and it outweighs the cost, we'll stay in that relationship. As soon as the balance tips, we tend to want to walk away. It's a bit of a harsh way of thinking about relationships, but interestingly, the research shows that it sort of does pan out. And finally, what we're aiming for is we're aiming to build attachment. We're aiming to build a relationship with somebody that they just want to spend time with you, this kind of long-term relationship. And this is the most difficult part, I think, of the dating ritual, is finding someone that you can spend the rest of your life with. There's a relationship counsellors use this term of the Rubin scale. It's got nothing to do with Dan Rubin, by the way. He's the only Rubin I know. But the Rubin scale is a way of judging how much in love or in like your partner is with you. And it asks questions like this. You know, I feel that Andy's a very stable person. I have confidence in Andy's opinions. Most people would react very favourably to Andy after a brief acquaintance. And if you can answer yes to those statements, then that person probably likes you. I think we can apply this to websites. Now, I feel Flickr's very stable. I feel that I have confidence in Flickr's opinions. I feel that my friends would like Flickr. Similarly, sort of with love, you know, I feel strongly possessive towards Andy. I find it easy to ignore his downsides. And, you know, it would be really hard for me to get along with Andy. I'm priming you here to all love me, by the way, so I hope my psychological effects are working. But this reminds me of Twitter. And it reminds me of people's behaviour. How many people would say that if Twitter didn't exist, they'd feel really hard to get along? How many people feel possessive about it, or that it's easy to ignore all of the downtime Twitter gives us? You know, Twitter is often a bit of an abusive partner, but we love it nevertheless. So to create this level of attachment, we need to think of ways to get people back to the site, to engage with us, to spend time with us. It could be cleverly worded emails like the threadless one that is explaining that the t-shirts that you've added into your shopping cart are about to expire. It could be games, it could be, you know, quizzes, it could be newsletters, but reasons to get people back to your site, really important. Not in a spammy way, but just in a kind of useful way. And the more interaction you can have, really, the better, I think. In terms of rewards, you know, we're seeing a lot of this kind of gameplay type mechanism on the web now. We're seeing sites like Foursquare giving you badges for certain kinds of behavior. And when you win a badge, it makes you feel good. And not only that, it makes you feel good about the person or the site that's giving you that badge. Again, I think Gowalla is a really excellent example of this. You know, it's got beautiful badges that you really want to kind of get. And the whole process, the whole kind of mechanics and architecture of Gowalla is about repeated use. It encourages you to run around and spend as much time as you can possible, checking in, sharing things, you know, building up your network of places you visit. Again, as a relationship, we want a relationship to grow. We're looking for relationships that make us better, that make us kick ass, as Kathy Sierra would say. And I think so Stack Overflow, you know, when I was doing some research, seems to be like a really good way of doing this. I have to be honest and say I'm not a user of Stack Overflow, although I use similar services. But what happens with Stack Overflow is the more you participate, the more badges you get. And these badges unlock extra abilities like the ability to vote things down or the ability to edit comments or delete things or flag as appropriate. And it's this sense that in a relationship you have to grow, you have to kind of prosper together. Sites like Amazon, sites like Last.fm, all do this. They grow with you. I mean, I think a classic example of this is the Nike Plus iPod. It kind of lures you in, you know, with these kind of seductive graphics and these seductive sort of stats. And once you've been using 9+ iPod for a few months, you're not likely to leave again because you have this kind of bond, this relationship. And so it's all about kind of building this relationship. It's all about making people good at what they do. If you can create an interface that makes people kick ass, makes people become experts, you've kind of got them. And like I say, lastly, you've got to admit your mistakes. You've got to be brave and come out and say, actually, guys, we screwed up. You know, Flickr does a great example of this. The last time they had a major outage, they put up this little page and saying if you color in the squares or do some designs on it and send it back to us, you could win a pro account. You know, they weren't afraid to say, yeah, we screwed up. I guess the classic example of this is the fail whale. We love Twitter, even though it seems sometimes not to love us back or seems to go off the rails or be a bit flaky, but we love it still. And that's really it, guys. That was my kind of whistle-stop tour of seduction techniques and how we can apply them to the World Wide Web. I hope it's given you some great ideas that you can think of ways to pick up your users. You can think of ways to make them love your products or service and keep them coming back for more. To delight them, to tease them, and ultimately to create this sort of long-term relationship. I thank you.